Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Before I say anything else related to this video, I just want to point out that I've been promoting this story for years and I never actually got around to making this video until now. To those who have been waiting, I apologize, but I'm glad to say that the wait is finally over. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the process of getting my driver's license, my first car, the time I ruined it all over trying to make $10, and the adventures of being homeless again afterwards. It was a major series of fucked up shit going on though, and I'm really glad it's in the past. Like, the police got involved 2 different times, I almost got killed 2 different times, I ran from the police, and I still had to manage all of that while working at McDonald's. I was only 16 years old, man. I hope nothing like this ever happens again, although I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Before we get into this video, please make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you're new to my content, and don't forget to click on the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload. Share this video to anybody that's ever gotten their first car accident, and let's play Near-suicidal car accident. It was the 3rd trimester of my freshman year in high school, which was spring 2017. I was lucky enough to even have driver's education as a school period because I would turn 15 that same spring. I had a permit test to take at the end of the trimester as part of the finals, and you had to be 15 in order to have a driver's permit. I only got 2 wrong on it, so I was able to pass. Usually you're eligible to take your driver's license after 6 months of having a permit and completing everything else that's required, but I had to wait an additional 5 months to turn 16. I had to use my permit for almost a year. I also plugged a lot of people with answers out of the textbook in class too. To be honest, I could have sold answers and made profit off that, but money never really mattered to me as a kid. I had a pretty good idea for driving anyways, despite what some of my friends would say in the early days. It's a lot harder to actually maintain a vehicle for the first time than to just picture how traffic actually is supposed to function. A lot of people around Minnesota don't yield to pedestrians very well either. Shit, I've almost been hit and killed before. I can talk by experience. Eventually, I was able to finally start the program to prepare you for your driver's test months after my mom spent $185 for it to register me in the program. Pretty glad she paid for it because 15-year-old me wasn't able to afford that, and I probably would have had to wait until I turned 18 to even get a permit. Sucks I gotta mention her for this part and a few others throughout this video though. Anyways, the driving program was a pretty shitty experience for me because a lot of times I had to walk from my house to the school and meet the driver at 7 in the morning, and living in Minnesota around late 2017, early 2018, it was sub-zero outside and the sun didn't rise until 8 in the morning. Plus, we got to drive in on the freeways in the cities with fat patches of black ice. I was pretty nervous damn near the entire time. I remember seeing like 10 cars in ditches. After I completed the program, I got my legal papers to take the test and had my mom sign off to complete my hours sheet. I scheduled my driver's test right at the end of my sophomore year and passed it my very first try, right after walking home high as fuck from smoking with some friends and facing another joint by myself. I used my mom's old car for the test, but luckily there was another car reserved for me since my mom bought it a few years back and it's been sitting in the garage ever since she got a new car. She was able to get it up and running after I drove it to a car shop. Once we got it back to the house, I was proud to say to myself that I was a licensed driver with a car for the very first time. The next day, my uncle and his son came over to visit from Georgia to spend some family time with us. At the time, I didn't want this to get in the way of spending time with people too much because I was really eager to drive my car. It would be a lot easier to hang out with friends given that I had a car and gave no fucks on conserving gas. I was able to manage family and friend time over the duration of my uncle and his son being over. We went out to the cities to explore parks and play basketball. We went out to a movie theater and pretty much drove around. I also hung out with friends to do a lot of pretty interesting shit. It was fun while it lasted, but sucked that it only lasted 5 days. On the last night of my uncle and his son staying over, the family had just came home from, like I said, watching a movie. I don't remember what the movie was, but we came back kind of late. It wasn't long until everybody decided to start winding down for bed. I still had a lot of energy and wanted to go out, but my mom wanted me to stay home because it was getting too late and I had a curfew at the time. So I went into my room and sat on my phone. One of my old friends hit me up asking if I could help him out with a sale of weed by providing transportation. He even offered to split half of what he would get, which was only $10, but it was an excuse to do something besides sitting in a room doing nothing. I snuck out of the the house, rolled the car out of the driveway, and started the engine once I was out on the road. I picked him up, his girlfriend was with him too, and we went out to a guy's house. The plan of this sale was kind of sketchy to begin with because we were all kids and the person who was buying it from him had to sneak out of his house and buy weed while his parents were sleeping. We had to pull up down the street so a dude could pick up as if he just went on a walk or something. But the sale was successful. He gave me $10, which I ended up just using for gas money. We decided to go to another friend's place to hang out and smoke after we hit him up to see if he was awake. Nobody was tired and wanted to go home yet, so that was our next move. We got there at around 11:30. We were there for about 3 hours. I was getting pretty tired during that time. We didn't leave until 2:30 in the morning, and at that point I was really tired. One of them lit up another joint and offered me to hit as I was bringing them home, but I denied it. I was able to keep conversation with them until after I dropped them off, and after that, it was bad. I was already weaving in and out of my consciousness, and I was using cruise control the entire time. Part of me wanted to stop because I didn't want to fall asleep and crash, but the problem was that I was a teenager who wasn't even supposed to leave the crib that night during against his curfew hours. There was police around like every 5 to 10 blocks, and I had extra family members sleeping at home. Last thing I needed was to get caught up with the law or get into it with my family and get kicked out, right? I tried using that fear to keep me up, but once I got on my street, it felt like the more I tried keeping my eyes open, the less I could feel my face, bro. It got to the point where it seemed like my eyes were still open because I was picturing myself in a car on the road to my house from my perspective, but not knowing that it was all just slowly becoming into more of my imagination and nothing was moving accordingly. That was the case until I bumped into a curb, tore up some grass in someone's front lawn, and crashed into a tree going 35 miles per hour just 4 houses down the street from my crib. It took me a few seconds to like register what just happened because I was still like tired as fuck, but the light did hit me and I was dead ass screaming and freaking the fuck out. Not only would I ruin my chance of having a car for over a year, but I had weed in the car. The car reeked like weed from that joint that was smoked earlier. The airbags went off. The car was already smoky, about to catch on fire. I was in somebody else's front lawn with their grass torn to shit, a totaled car by their tree, and I was already hearing sirens. And just a bunch of shit that just happened so fast and I really didn't need that night. To make matters worse, a lady who lived in that house woke up, saw the aftermath, and started talking to me through her window. Luckily, I was able to toss the weed in her backyard before she woke up and saw me. The police did show up relatively quickly. They asked me if I was okay, and they were pretty much shocked to see that I didn't even get a scratch at all from that car accident. Seatbelts do wonders. Like, I was head on with the tree, and it was less than a foot away from the windshield. They also asked me if I had any weed, and I told them that I had just dropped somebody off who was smoking a joint, and I guess that was enough to get me off the hook. They let me go with no charges, and I went home. Of course, my uncle was awake when I got back, so I didn't even have to sneak in, but luckily the punishment didn't arrive until the morning, because it was already 3:30 in the morning. Everybody just wanted to sleep at that time. Fast forward to later in the morning, and I was on the way to the airport with my mom, uncle, and his son. Of course, the uncle and the mom were very pissed, but for a fairly good cause. You know, people fuck up and get themselves killed every day. It is what it is. But I had an issue with her threatening me. It turned into an argument real quick, but after I told her to shut up, my uncle just launched his shit. He immediately unbuckled his seatbelt and mine, opened my door, and started punching me. The real scary part was when we were still moving with traffic and that I was so close to falling on the street after he kept putting his hands on me. I had a handle right above the door that I held onto for dear life. After my mom pulled over, it wasn't over. As soon as I got out of the car, my uncle got out and started chasing me. The chase wasn't really that long, but he did chase me across the street in a gas station parking lot, making threats against me while everybody standing by could see. Eventually, he turned back to the car and got back in. My mom left me stranded. I used the stranger's phone to call the cops, but after the dispatcher told me the best they can do was take me back home before my mom gets back home, I figured the best way to handle the situation was to just leave for a little while and come back when I would believe that my mom called down to the point where she won't make death threats against me and have her brothers try to fucking kill me. Instead of pulling through with the cop call, I ended up just walking an hour back to my house. I packed up some stuff that I figured would have needed. I ran away from home, and the first thing I did after that was look for a place to stay. It was pretty difficult for the first several hours because all I had was an iPad mini. My mom had taken my phone and I didn't get it back until the police got involved in this situation again. Stay tuned for the rest of the story. Eventually, I was able to meet up with a couple other people. Turns out they were actually kicked out too. I mean, one of them was already homeless. The other had just gotten into it with his mom, I think. For the rest of the day, we pretty much walked around and chilled at a bunch of parks. us. Only one of us had a phone with service. The homeless dude didn't even have a phone. I had my iPad mini, which is pretty much good as nothing without an internet connection. Inevitably, it was getting dark outside and we were getting tired. We stopped at someone's house to hang out for a bit to take a break from being on the road, but we weren't able to spend the night. The friend that we visited gave us hammocks because he knew that it was just going to be a long night for us. I guess luckily we were in Minnesota and that nighttime only lasts around 7 to 8 hours, so nighttime wouldn't last horribly too long. We left his crib at like 10 p.m. The other two guys that I came with were also able to borrow the other guy's 2 bikes. I was left out with no bike, so I had to ride on the back of someone else. Eventually, we made it to a park that was kind of by a dam, but was rather more secluded because of all the trees. We sat down in a pavilion with our light running. One of us realized we had money and that we were all pretty fucking dehydrated and hungry. I think we traveled like over 10 miles that day. The 2 guys with bikes ended up going for the trip and I sat at the park waiting for them. I had a feeling before they left that one of them should have probably stayed with me for the simple fact that it was really just a one-person mission, but a few minutes after they left, the light above the pavilion shut off and it was pitch black everywhere. It was probably like midnight or 1 in the morning when that happened too, and I couldn't really get a hold of anybody or navigate myself anywhere since I never really went to the park before and that I could barely see anything. I didn't have my glasses either. I ended up staying at the pavilion until they came back. It felt like they took for fucking ever, but they did come back. We relocated to a playground that was nearby. We basically set up camp and slept in our hammocks. Kind of. I ended up just sleeping on the platform later on in the night because even that was more comfortable than laying down in a hammock at a playground with poles that aren't really proportionate for hammock hanging. We all woke up at around 5 or 5:30 in the morning. The sun was already starting to rise and people were actually starting to go for walks with their dogs or some shit. I found it pretty funny. That's pretty early to be waking up and taking walks like that, especially for me. I'd have to be a night owl or something like that, apart from being homeless, of course. Nonetheless, as soon as we woke up and saw people, we pretty much packed our shit and booked it. We were able to go to this one girl's crib and stay with her for a couple of days. Nothing too fun, but it sure as hell was a lifesaver. But that would all come to an end and I would eventually be in the streets by myself. The friend that had initially gotten into it with his mom had just gone back home. The homeless guy went out of town. I was just stuck in my hometown bumming around in the streets until police got involved in my situation again. I mean, the first night of being on my own post being with some friends, I ran from the police past curfew after almost being spotted in my neighborhood and I slept under a bridge for like 3 hours, never again. Second time, I slept in a dugout by the high school. That was a horrible idea. The 2 days I spent by myself were really just days I chilled out on my own and really thought about how things were really going to be when I came back home. I mean, at the time, things were really tense between just me and my mom, and I'd still go through some pretty extreme lengths to avoid that. But the second night I fell asleep in the dugout that had a bench and I woke up to light in my face. The light quickly disappeared, and I quickly learned that 2 police officers were standing right next to me, trying to wake me up. Pretty scary feeling. Back when I used to be called in as a runaway, and doing that too much would have gotten me locked up in juvie. I was brought home by the officers. It was like 3:30 in the morning at that point. I was pretty surprised to see that my mom answered. Then again, she's used to doing night shifts at work. In conclusion of the story, the cops told my mom not to kick me out again, but obviously it would happen about 1,000,000 more times after that. I went back into my room, and my mom pretty much acted like nothing ever happened, surprisingly. That wouldn't last for too long, though, as she would continue to suspect me of doing dumb shit and have me fired from my McDonald's job a few months later. Beat the fired from McDonald's over money video I made last year. The end. The moral to this story is don't drive if you are too tired. It's actually just as bad as driving drunk, if not worse, since you're fatigued. If you need to, pull over somewhere safe and take a nap, even if you're just exhausted as fuck and got a long-ass drive ahead. Prevent yourself from being in any scenario that has any possibility of making you homeless or down bad. Take it from a guy with experience. Don't fight your family members. That's not fun. Don't run away from home if you're underage. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. Get good grades. And keep watching my YouTube videos. Well, thanks for sticking around for this stretch of a video. If y'all like this video, please give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you're new to my content. Don't forget to click on the notification bell to be notified every time I upload. Follow me on all of my social media. All the links will be in the description below. Share this video to anybody that has ever fallen asleep behind the wheel before or has ever gotten into a car crash. And I'll see y'all next Sunday again. Peace out. Sauce.